All right. Let's take a look here. Let's move this. Ordinarily, I was going to, we're going to see what happens here. So, we'll see how this goes. We'll see how this goes here. Welcome. Let's see here. All right. I do try to start promptly at 6. That's kind of how I do things. Usually I'm late on just about everything. And if it's like an appointment, or in fact, the more important the appointment is, the more likely it is I am to be like catastrophically late. That's usually how it works for me. If it's something really important and there's like lots of money on the line, and it's like absolutely critical that I be there, and no one else can take my place, no one else can proxy for me. If it's super duper critical, I'm probably going to be like ridiculously late for it. That's just kind of how it works. Like, there will be some kind of catastrophe on the freeway. Somebody will have blown themselves up or something like that. I just, not like literally TikTok, like figuratively, they didn't not actually explode. It's not like spontaneous human combustion. I'm not even sure if that exists anymore. I'm not even sure that's a thing. Back in the day, I remember hearing people talk about it, and it's like it just sort of disappeared, the whole idea behind spontaneous human combustion. Probably because people don't smoke as much, and so they're not smoking in bed and thus burning themselves alive. It's just kind of that would be my guess as to why we don't have so much spontaneous human combustion. It's as many cases that exist. People don't smoke as much. So I got this question, and it was this was a money related question, like actual, not like what to do with money, but like money in and of itself, the idea of money. And he says, so he asked the question, he's like, I suppose that barter system was a necessity when money wasn't available, and how did fiat money even come into being? And especially originally, if you had gold exchange, if you had a gold exchange, then did you have to exchange for fiat, or was there some type of distribution type system? Yeah, so spontaneous human combustion. So, like I said, I mean, most of us forget about that kind of stuff, and I just, in fact, there was the last Saturday, in fact, because we had we had dinner, howdy. We had dinner, we had guests over, right? And so, and it's not every Saturday we do this. It's kind of a random thing. It's like maybe, yes, I hear you. I can see you. Hey. Anyway, we had friends over, and, that was one of the things that had come up was something and I don't even remember how the hell it came up, how spontaneous human combustion came up in the course of dinner. Like of all things, right? How would that come up? But yet there it was. And so, like of all things, right? How would that come up? But yet there it was. And so, and we're just thinking about I think it's because people don't smoke as much. I stopped smoking, almost 20 years? No, like 18 years ago, something like that. It's a while back. So, anyway, so that question about about the idea of like money in and of itself, like what about how do we go from gold, right, as a currency? How did we go from that to like paper money? And I know it's. I think that's what it is. By the way, just so you know, I am trying to keep track of this stuff. I do want to answer this dude's question because it's been forever, and I know I try to take screenshots of people asking questions, and if I can get to them, I'll try and respond somehow if I can do so. And not everybody sees all this stuff anymore. It's because just in general, my account doesn't get as much FYP push anymore. I think that if you have if you talk about some of the topics that I talk about, you run the risk of nobody really liking you, at least not on the platform side, right? If you own a platform and you're hearing people talk about this, So anyway, that the question was like, if effectively was how did we go from a gold currency to like gold, like actual gold coins or gold dust, outlaw Josie Wales style. How did we go from that to this paper money idea, the idea of money conjured from nothing? Like, well, there's a lot of the marketing aspect of this is that, well, okay, if you're going to a store and they're always giving, let's say, a discount, like discount for dollars, right? If they give you a tiny discount because, oh, well, it's more convenient. I don't have to weigh it. I can hire a guy to take in dollars, and I don't. Like, whereas if the owner, if you're handling gold dust, right, the owner has to kind of be there and make sure that it's real, right, or somebody who knows what they're doing. And whereas if it's paper money, then it's a lot easier, right? It's more convenient, so there's a convenience factor. And then eventually what happens with that kind of thing, and I have to cover this up actually. Bear with me just a half a second. I have to cover up the number of people thing. Not because I get nervous or anything. That's not it. It's just that it's actually kind of a distraction, and it ends up me trying to gauge things. So I just don't want to do that. Anyway, so just boring conversation here. Even though, and I'll try and make it fun because I can give you the story of sort of the Old West. Okay, so I mean, like those Westerns are always fun, right? We all love Westerns, kind of. I mean, if they're good, they got to be good. Anyway, so the marketing aspect comes in. It's cheaper to have, from a business standpoint, have somebody taking in paper money because it's a fixed number. The theory is that there's supposed to be 1/20th of 1 ounce of 1 troy ounce of gold that is backing that $1 at that ratio, right? That's the theory, and that goes all the way back to, I have no idea who Terry is. I'm sorry. Anyway, that was the theory to and I don't have a moderator. I probably should. Somebody asked if I wanted to do that and stuff, and I probably should get somebody to mod for me. Anyway, it would be cheaper to have somebody just go with this easy accounting system of dollars than it is to go with a gold currency. However, out west, it was hard for banks to get a foothold into lending, and that's why banks, of course, push this. Is because if what's the kiss of death for a bank? Nobody needing to borrow any money. I mean, what if you think about it? If everybody watching this and everybody seeing this everywhere, if you didn't need to borrow any dollars at all, right? Well, then how would a bank make any real money? They wouldn't, because if you don't need to ever borrow anything, well, then they're kind of out of gas there, aren't they? So there's the marketing aspect of how we go from a physical gold coin to a paper dollar. Counterfeiting was some of it, although it usually, if you try to counterfeit gold, it generally ends up costing more money to try and counterfeit the actual. I don't mean the counterfeiting gold. Gold is an element. I'm watching this madness here. Then centralized. I'll come back to that. That's a good question. Actually, in fact, let me scroll that and lock it right in place so that I can come back. So I remember to come back to that. Okay. So, because it's a great question, and there's a lot of people asking about that. So anyway, you had this history of people wanting to use, gold, but then it morphs into the ease of paper money and the marketing of paper money. And this leads to the ease of counterfeiting. Now, we all know the story. If you followed my work and you followed me for the last 4 weeks or so, we've talked about this whole thing with Ford Motor Company. So, not to sound like a broken record, but Henry Ford Henry Ford was not a dumb guy. He was once on trial a long time, like way back in the day when he was alive. But he was on trial, and there was a lawyer that was badgering him. And they were trying to make him out like a fool, like he didn't know what he was doing. He was just sort of this doddering old, Joe Biden type character. And Ford was not like that. He was actually a very shrewd businessman. And when Durant, I think it's Walter Durant, someone's going to correct me, I think it was Walter Durant. He was the CEO or the president of General Motors at the time. He tried to buy up Ford. Ford said, yes, I'll take $2 million worth of GM stock, but I want $8 million in cash. And the cash that he demanded was physical gold. And they couldn't do it. Nobody could. The banks didn't have, in other words, he was proving that the banks had no way to cover all of the paper they had put in the market effectively. This is, I mean, so like this is, and every now and again you'll see people that'll do these gold vigilante things where they try to settle in gold. They try to demand gold, physical gold from their commodities. And they can't, they can't do it. They can't settle in that. There's just no money to do it. Or there's no gold, there's not enough physical gold. You'd have to revalue gold at like $2 million an ounce. So that's how it actually happened. It happened in that way. Yes?
Terry. Take care of Terry.
I don't know what Terry is.
Click Terry and hit block.
Oh, you've got to be kidding me.
No.
Where the hell is block? There is no block. Here we go. Good God. Block. Here we go. Good God. You got to go through like 15 different things to get somebody blocked. Like, yes, I'm sure. Okay. Anyway, hopefully that solves the problem for everybody out there. That was how we morphed into this.
Time him out or mute him or something.
What? I did block him. Anyway, so the challenges of running something live, which I don't usually do very often. I'm not very good at this. I'd be the first to admit I'm not exactly the best at the whole social media thing. I'm not even very good at being social, let alone adding media to that. I'd be the first to admit I'm not exactly the best at the whole social media thing. I'm not even very good at being social, let alone adding media to that. So anyway, to answer that gentleman's question, that's how we morphed into this. And it's because there's also this insatiable desire that people have to have their cake and eat it too. They want to be able to have the illusion of wealth, but at the same time, they want to have all that. They don't want to do a lot of work, and fiat currency affords that. It allows you to, and you can run on for a long time, and eventually the math catches up with you. If you've seen that old video I did, I don't know, like 6 months. No, it wasn't that long ago. It was like 4 or 5 months ago, where I said, yeah, the math is catching up, and Ponzi schemes, you don't taper. They just, and that's exactly what's happened. So thoughts on centralized digital currency. If you're talking about the digital, centralized digital currency, like the CBDC, the central bank digital currency, the dollar is basically a CBDC in all but name. In terms of the way that it's handled, most of it is digital, right? I mean, like we all know that. We all know that, like, I think all of us know, most of us anyway, know that when you go into a bank, the bank doesn't have like giant bales of $100 bills like in every bank heist movie out there, right? Most all of the so-called money is digital. It's just numbers in a computer. There's no actual like giant blocks of $100 bills, and they don't have to do that anymore because there isn't. For those of you who are Gen Xers out there, you remember this. All my Gen Xers remember how this works. Remember back in the day when people had to go to the bank to cash their Friday paychecks, right? And there would be these huge, like, again, for you younger people, like you don't even know, dude, it was ridiculous. You would have like cars blocking intersections. The banks would have like 10, I'm not kidding, 10 drive-through lanes with those little tubes, those little vacuum tubes. And they would be just plugged. They would be full the entire time. And one of them always was empty. It had always had a cone in front of it because it didn't work or something like that. And so but anyway, there would be this massive number of people trying to cash Friday paychecks or Thursday paychecks. It was Thursday where I grew up. Everybody got paid on Thursday. That way you had money for Friday, so you could just leave straight from work and then you could just go straight out and party, right? And So yeah, and this was very common in like blue collar areas. If you grew up in that area, and my Gen Xers, they'll all tell you, yes, they remember sitting in the car, typically without air conditioning, because back then everybody still drove cars from the 70s, sometimes in the 60s. You know, I grew up broke, so the cars, like early 70s cars with no AC in them at all. You know, and of course, you know, fortunately, I grew up. My mom didn't smoke very often. It was like really rare. Only if she was just kind of, you know, knocking one back with friends or something like that. Then she would smoke socially. But she wasn't actually like a chain smoker, so I didn't have to put up with that. But I knew other kids that would have to like sit in the car, you know, in the summertime, going through the bank drive-through cash checks. Anyway, not to get too far off into that field, but yeah, that was what it was. And so you would have these banks that actually would literally have like potentially millions of dollars of $100 bills in these giant blocks, right? And they would to cash these Friday payroll checks or these Thursday payroll checks. And that wasn't uncommon and for that to happen. And well, most everybody knows now that it's pretty much digital. You know, all of that money, most people don't even see the money anymore, right? You don't even see the bills any longer. How many people actually get an actual paycheck anymore? I don't know anybody who gets a physical paycheck any longer and has to go to the bank and then cash it. And of course, if you want to cash it, I mean, good luck trying to cash a check at a bank. I mean, my God. I mean, have you seen the kind of crap that you have to do when you go to a bank? They'll want like $10 to cash the check. They're like check cashing places now. They're just like, you know, scumbag check cashing places and title loan places and payday loan. It's the same basic idea now, you know, but just slightly cheaper. And so what would happen was that, you know, anyway, what would happen is that your currency is basically digital anyway. They know, howdy, they know that they know how you're spending all this. And most of us, especially when think of how many transactions are online. I mean, like almost everything, right? I mean, how many times do you buy something online per week? Probably 5 or 6 times, maybe more, right? So those transactions are all digital. Those are not there's no actual physical paper dollars changing hands at that point. So, but no, I think that centralized digital currency is what we have now. What we would like, or at least what I would like to see, and I've been very clear about this, my stated goal is the complete and total destruction of the US dollar so that we can replace it with anything. I don't care what it is. It just has to be something that can't be counterfeited from nothing. That's it. That's all I'm after. I don't care what it is, whether it's orange internet money or bag of gold dust. And we go back, we seriously go back to the, you know, Charles Bronson stone face, you know, Western days or something like that, you know, where Yul Brynner, you know, whatever it is. I mean, like, that's just it. So let me scroll down a bit here and let's see if we can find it. So, oh my God. Every time this thing, you know, you just barely touch it and it goes like, yeah, and by the way, whoever, I don't know if it was like Terry was just excited. I don't know who, I hope that for real, I hope I didn't like make anybody too terribly mad and such. Not that I really care, but I don't try to do it deliberately, right? You know what I mean? Accidentally, just, you know, I do enough damage accidentally. Ask anybody who works with me. I'm off for you next time. Yeah, I know. Somebody, somewhere back up here, there was somebody who had asked about, like, can gold be trusted? I was someone saying, you know, it's a gold shill, nobody wants gold. No, I'm not really a gold shill. I'm really not. I think there's better technologies that are out there. I think there's better products that are out there. As opposed to physical gold. But the reason I point out gold, and I talk about gold here a lot more than I talk about a lot of the other stuff, is because most people, they don't understand the idea of hard currency. If I can get people to understand that, right, and gold is the easiest one because it's a visual. It's something that people can actually They can actually think, because we've all probably had some gold in our hand at some point. So there's a psychological aspect there. So once people understand the idea of something that is an element that can't be counterfeited, then yeah, I mean, but no, I'll take anything, as far as that's concerned. The peso to give you a ticket for, they're still competitive, I guess. I mean, it depends on if you're doing. I must have misread that. Who is this? This must be Terry that I'm scrolling through now. The 14th is gold. These guys, rest in peace, Terry. Sorry. This is the boring part here of me having to try and scroll. Let's see here. This has already imparted more knowledge than 98% of the on this app. Well, I mean, so I mean, like I said, to me this is boring. To me, this is boring stuff because like if I watch this stuff back, like let's say that I watch this stuff back, I find myself tedious and boring. I know some people don't, but I do. I've always found myself boring. It's why I try not to talk a whole lot to people. Can you explain mortgage-backed securities and why the Fed holds $2.5 trillion to keep the real estate market propped up artificially? That's it. That's the reason. Mortgage-backed securities are just more and more Ponzi scheme. It's just a progressive Ponzi scheme that has gotten itself so far out of control. Think about it like this, and I've talked about this before in previous videos, but for people who may have just found me, or maybe you found me recently, you haven't had a chance to go back and through like the old school videos that are like 3 or 4 years old. Hard to believe it's been 3 years. So put yourself in the bank's position. If you're a banker and you just lent out, $500,000 to somebody to buy a house. So they buy that house and they're happy. They got the keys. They move in. Everything is great. And then the house next door to their house sells for $250,000. You have a problem now. You have something called comp value adjustment. And if other houses start selling for these, in other words, if the real estate market starts trending down, which it is, by the way, but if it starts trending down, then what you end up with is, as a banker, you lent $500,000 on a property now that you can't sell for $250,000 if you foreclose. So your balance sheet starts to go negative. So the theory with all these mortgage-backed securities is to just keep allowing people to keep borrowing these absurd amounts of money that like no normal person would ever, particularly the rent seekers, people who they went to the class at the airport Marriott and they're going to get rich in real estate. So rather than actually wait and find a property, like let's say you want to buy a 322 and you want to make it into a rental property. Okay, well, rather than look for one that you can pick up for about $65,000, which you're like, oh my God, Axel, that's crazy. No one has that. Like those used to exist and they weren't that uncommon. And it's not even that far back. I don't have to go back into even the 80s for that. I can go back about 6 years ago. And there were houses that you could pick up that you had to maybe do a little bit of restoration on, but you could actually do that, and you could actually make those houses actually cash flowed because you bought them at the right price. You make your money on the buy, not the sell. And what happens is that a lot of people, they miss all of that. What they do is they go find a real estate agent. The real estate agent says, oh, this is a great deal. Why is it a great deal? Well, because I'm selling it. Of course it is. Of course it's always the time to buy, right? My real estate agent and I, by the way, her and I see eye to eye on this one because she's just as shrewd as I am. She looks at these prices and goes, you people are crazy. Find somebody else to represent you. I'm not going to even try to sell that house for that kind of money because just because you overpaid, don't make your problem my problem. So anyway, they have to keep this illusion of real estate prices always going up. Otherwise, they have to adjust their balance sheets. Part of mark-to-market accounting. And if they have to reevaluate how much money they have lent out, then the principals of the bank, the principals being the owners, the people, the guys on record, the guys who signed the dotted line and said, yeah, hey, I'm going to go into the banking business. They have to go out of pocket. They have to like sell their yacht. They don't want to do that. They have to, sell some. They have to find something to sell. And and of course, you know how this works, right? How many people are in the yacht buying? How many of you out there watching this right now are just trying to think of like, well, do I want a 140-foot yacht or a 162-foot yacht? How many of you are in that market right now? Probably not too many. Unless DiCaprio is tuned in. Probably not too many of you are interested in buying a yacht, which means if you have to try and offset something like that, especially quickly, you're going to eat it like hard. Okay, so these guys, that's the problem, is they can't liquidate this stuff fast enough. Look at all these office buildings. I'm in Houston, or the Houston area, and all of these buildings are empty. I'm not talking about the big buildings downtown. I'm not talking about those. But like all the surrounding, like these big tall buildings, like all these buildings are empty. There's nobody in these things. They have these giant for lease banners out there, and they've been there for 10 years. They've been for lease for 10. There's nobody going there. Let's see here. So I hope that answers your question. You got to learn about. Yeah, I know. I'm trying to learn some of this stuff, but keep in mind, I just don't do a ton of. I have other stuff that I do. I mean, today I spent all day working on my truck. My big truck, my semi truck. Actually, I was working on the trailer, but you get the idea. Anyway, let's see here. Dropped exactly, gold standard. Let's see here. Fractional lending. Yeah, fractional lending's bad. Fractional lending is in no small part responsible for the massive inflation that we're seeing today. Actually, you know what? You just reminded me of this too. I was going to cover this a couple of videos ago or something. I just ran out of time. I just didn't have time to mess with it. But I'm glad you reminded me of this. This is actually important that we talk about this. So when you start lending a lot of money into the economy, right, you create inflation because you're creating more dollars. You didn't create more stuff. You just created more dollars, which means you now have more dollars chasing fewer goods and services in the marketplace, which means that you're going to see prices just kind of go haywire, right? The problem is we don't have enough people on the back end of that to support it. Remember I talked about this, the baby boom thing? The baby boomers were so named because it was a boom. It was the exception to the rule. So on the back end of that, there aren't enough Gen Xers. I mean, like there's not many of us. Gen X is a pretty small generation, actually, demographically speaking, right? And, so when you combine Gen X, Millennials, and Zoomers together, now it's a fairly large group, but at the same time, there isn't really enough people to support all of these ridiculous prices, especially when you look at the average incomes, right? Incomes didn't go up. For some of you old timers that followed me like way long time ago, you'll remember the video that I talked about. The incomes haven't gone up, but yet all these people are trying to drive rent prices up, I told every landlord, like, you guys are crazy. If you think that people can afford to consistently pay $2,600, $2,800, $3,800, $4,500 a month rents, if you think people can consistently pay that for any real length of time, you are out of your mind. You paid too much for that property if you're trying to get that kind of money, because incomes don't support that. Now you could say that, well, but there's higher incomes in other. Yes, but the problem is the same thing that the guys who, okay, so let's say that you're a 6'5" guy and you make $400,000 a year, right? And you're single. Oh, and on top of that, you're 32 and you have all your hair, let's say, right? Okay, and not only that, you have abs. You can probably get just about any girl that you want, right? Okay, so think about it from a landlord perspective. If you're trying to go after like the cream of the crop tenants, why would they rent from you? What are you offering? If I'm willing to write you a check for $5,000 a month for rent, then and let's say that I've got that kind of money to spend on rent, well, Why would I rent from you? Isn't there other stuff out there that's just, you see what I'm saying? Like this is sort of the problem. Okay, now I realize that's area specific. Again, if you're in downtown LA or something like that, okay, I'm talking about just in general. When you start looking at the averages, okay, so that's what I'm talking about. So yeah, I mean, on the downhill side of that, we just don't have the people to support it. But yeah, fractional lending is hugely responsible for that. Hugely responsible for that. Listen to your videos. I'm Gen Z. It gives me a new outlook on finances. Thank you. You're welcome. I hope I'm helpful. I try, as best I can. A lot of the stuff that I talk about isn't talked about in most schools. In fact, most universities, you're not going to find an MBA class that's going to talk about this kind of stuff because, unless you're going to try and get the same degree that like Henry Kissinger had or something like that, you're probably not going to find too many people who talk about this level of stuff because what you're looking, years ago, I started explaining this, that all the different isms that are out there, I get it all the time, right? Like we need this ism or that ism, or how can you avoid this? Like those are systems of management. If it ends, generally speaking, not always, but generally speaking, if it ends in the word ism of some kind, it's usually a system of management. It's not an actual economic system. It's typically a managerial type style. Okay, so I hope that helped. I should have bales of, yeah, I know, huh? Well, that's how I would do it, actually. I would do it as a direct implosion. That's how I would handle it. I would just be honest with people and just not try and do any gimmicks. Because, trust me, the next 4 years are going to be just gimmick after gimmick after gimmick after gimmick of trying to keep it's going to be just trying to keep, like spinning plates. Okay, it's just going to be 4 years of that, 4 more years of that, and most people, what's going to happen is you're going to be 4 years older by the time by the time the plates start falling off the sticks. That's all that's going to happen. Direct stimulus is how I would go about it, and stimulus with the idea of implosion, right? A controlled demolition of. And you can say like, oh, but why Axel? Why would you want a controlled demolition of the economy? Because whenever you guys say that kind of stuff, whenever I hear that, it's like you say that as though this is worth saving. This is a teardown, right? This is you bringing me a completely smashed unibody car to my body shop and then saying, can you fix it? No, there's no fixing this. This is you coming to me as a physician and saying, oh my, 700 pounds overweight, and you're in your like 60s, assuming you could make it that far, and saying, doctor, help me. I'm like, what would I do? Like, what we need a time machine. We have to go back and we have to take the 700 pounds off when you are in your 20s. And then we can go forward from there. In other words, that's not going to, in other words, it's not going to happen. So, that said, that's just how, that's kind of how this works. It's a teardown. I would just implode the dollar and then of course, unfortunately, you then have to have leaders, real leaders. And let me explain in my opinion, this is just my opinion, because I'm trying to avoid the politics thing because it's been crammed down everybody's throats for the last 6 months. And so I've been trying to avoid it a little bit, but let me touch on the corner of it. Okay. Real leaders are people who can do this, like this right here. This is actually what's needed. Is someone to sit down and actually talk to people and try and educate them, bring them up to speed. Especially, and there's no excuse now. You could have that excuse that you couldn't have, that the communication wasn't what it was before the days of the internet. Now, there's absolutely zero excuse. There's zero excuse that your congressman, for example, whoever it is, I don't care whether it's eye patch guy, unfortunately, or any of these other people, whoever your so-called leaders are, they should be able to do this once a week, bare minimum, right? Bare minimum, they should be able to do something like this where they're actually directly interacting with people, because you can now. You don't have to go to a building. You don't have to, the logistics of having to like, okay, well, how many people do we think are going to show up? Oh, 6,000. Oh my God. Okay, so we need an arena. Like, you don't have to do any of that stuff. Nowadays, you can actually directly interact with your constituents just like this. Okay, and this is the stuff that is sadly, it's necessary, but it's not happening. At least not that I know of. No, and certainly not to the level where you're talking down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand. For those of you that remember the 90s, let's see. People are afraid of the bank. I'm not sure which bank, but yes, they are. Mom never had AC in a car. Yeah, I know. I grew up without AC. So there was a content creator on TikTok today that just mentioned this. I just happened to see this, where he says, like, he was talking about, like, what did other kids have that you walked into their house and you felt that like they were like you thought they were rich, right? So for me, it was if they had an Atari. Like if a kid had an Atari, dude, I mean, only the super rich kids had that. Like I didn't have anything even close to that. The first game system I had, I think I was in my like late 30s. Okay, just I was busy working. But yeah, I mean, like that was like huge in my area. And just before that, again, not to just go nostalgia with everybody here, but just before that, if you walk into a kid's house and they had a VCR, back in the day, like just again, young people just don't understand. Imagine walking into someone's house and they have like, I don't know, a $25,000 television set, like a 12-foot TV or something like it's like $25,000 at Best Buy. That's what that would be like for like younger Xers that would walk into a house in like 1981 and they had a top load VCR. You're like, oh my God. And at least that's how it was. And so central AC, that was like, I mean, that was absurd. Only the truly rich people had that, who, had central AC, at least where I grew up. I mean, like nobody had AC. OG safety centers, AC was 55 down. Yeah. Saw a lady checked on me. Was we now everybody? Shared live with 5. Well, thank you so much for fish hooks. So you're telling you're telling affairs I've always got. Yeah, I know. Imagine the crazy lost tonight. Yes. Lost. What do you mean lost? Yes, it was lost. All that money was lost somewhere. Yeah, I mean, most counterfeiting, in fact, actually happens outside the country. Most U.S. dollar counterfeiting. It's one of the reasons why I like one person asked me, like, why is it that the $100 bill is the largest bill? It's because it puts an automatic limitation on how much you can counterfeit per day. For real. That's the answer. Because, like, you would think about it, like, right, how often do we burn through, like, a lot of money, right? I mean, you would think that $500 bills and $1,000 bills wouldn't have gone out of circulation because, but $1,000 bills were in circulation all the time in the 1930s and 40s, right? They were everywhere. And so you would think, like, well, why wouldn't they be around more when the average car is something like $62,000 or some crazy nonsense like that? Well, yeah, I mean, that's just it. You would think but it's so that it keeps a limitation, like a direct limitation on the amount of money you can physically counterfeit in one day. It's about 9 cents to counterfeit a $100 bill for those of you keeping track at home. Let's see here. Just got the #1 gifter badge. I don't know what I don't know what those, by the way, I mean, just so you guys know, I don't know what any of this stuff means, right? So if you're like, I mean, just some of the conversations, like I have no idea what some of this stuff actually means. For real. I genuinely just kind of do my thing here. I just turn this on and go. And hopefully it works out. Let's see, they'd be shut down if the banks were real, they'd shut down banks if they were. Yeah, I mean any type of, like I said, that's just it. If anything where there wasn't where there was an honest system, yeah, you'd get in a lot of trouble. Honest systems, there's no money in an honest system. Just like I pointed out, like there's no money in you owning a house, owning your house outright. You going to your house and living there, and just sort of chill, right? You get the big bean bag. That's what this is, by the way. It's a giant bean bag. I'm just sitting on the floor. So anyway, when you just chilling in your house and having no debt, no bills, no nothing, there is no money in that for other people. Now that's great for you. That's awesome for you, and that's what I think everybody should have. But that's not good for the bankers. Bankers, politicians. Oh my God, man, what would they do, right? That's how it works. Yeah, it's 17 grand for a car. I just lost everything. I was trying to scroll through this to see if so up front, I apologize if you had a question, ask it again, because I may have missed it. Now, you don't have to do like that one dude, Terry. Don't hyper spam it or something. Let's see here. Love your content. Learn more about the economy. I would suggest, first of all, I would always tell anybody this: go to get a book called "The Creature from Jekyll Island" by Edward Griffin. Edward Griffin. He is probably the most knowledgeable person that you could probably ever. He's still very much alive. He is probably the single most knowledgeable person about the interworkings of central banking that will tell you the truth. That's the important part to qualify that. There are other people who probably know more than he does, but that are willing to actually tell you the truth about central banking and how central banking works. There's probably nobody better. Again, like I said, there's lots of people out there, and I'm not trying to diss anybody, because there's a lot of guys that are good influences out there, but there's probably nobody better that can explain the monumental scam of central banking. And make no mistake, central banking, that is exactly what it is. It is just a scam. You have to think about it in terms of it is not an economic system. It's a scam. Years ago, I worked on a boat in the Bering Sea, up around near the Russian border. And one of the guys that I worked on the ship with, his name was Ruslan. And he was a Soviet defector. And so this is going back a ways, right? And I remember asking him one time, we were in the galley, we were just having dinner. And, I didn't speak Russian or anything, but he spoke really good English. His English was actually, with the exception of the accent, he had an awesome command of the English language. He had been in country long enough to speak English. And I remember just asked him, I said, because I was like 21 at the time, and I said, explain to me the whole communism thing, because I don't understand it. And I genuinely was asking a serious question. I was the perfect candidate for this. I had no preconceived notions going in one way or the other. Okay, I didn't have any preconceived notion as to whether or not I thought that this system was better or that system was better. I had no preconceived notions. I was asking just an honest question from a 21-year-old kid perspective. And he gave me and I've never forgotten the answer. I've never forgotten this. I mean, he gave the most perfect answer that I think that after talking with everybody, with other people, and just taking a lot of this stuff in, he gave probably the perfect answer. He says, look, it's just a scam. It's a word that is invented to get people to believe something and go in one direction, and keep electing leaders, or keep looking to these leaders, keep following these leaders, keep doing what they do, keep following all these crazy orders that they give out. Keep doing that. And we're going to have this utopia at some point, right? Now, in the meantime, the people who are running all of this are just looting the country. There is no, in other words, what he was explaining was, he's like, there is no pot of gold, so to speak, at the end of the rainbow. It's just a bunch of people in control that are looting the country on the back end. They're just siphoning off as much as they can. Eventually it collapses, and they go and they move on to something else. It's like, it's just a system of management of people, and get them to, and so the analogy that I have for this, and not to belabor this point, but the analogy I have is there's an old movie called Waterworld. Don't crucify me on this one, okay? That's not my Waterworld, okay? So there's a Dennis Hopper character, and the leader of the smokers. It's comical to even watch. I can't even watch it. It's almost unwatchable for me. But there is something that I remember from this movie that I thought was really funny. he gives this great speech to all these guys on this giant ship, right, to get them to row in one direction. And he gives them this speech, and then after he's done with the speech, they all take off, and they all start rowing, they all start working, and someone says something like, dude, there's like everything you said is a lie. And he's like, well, who cares? I mean, you know, they'll row for 6 months, you know. He was just trying to get people organized. It was just trying, you know, so this is where this perpetual moving goalpost comes from. This is the whole, we're all gonna go to Mars. Again, for those of you too young to remember this, you really need to take the time to put the phone down, okay? Go on iTunes or wherever, okay? And start watching old TV shows from the 50s and 60s about the moon bases and the space travel and like, this is not new. Everything that you're seeing unfold now has unfolded in the past. This is the same basic playbook. Okay, it's hey, and keep after this. Keep rowing in the same direction, people. Don't look up. Don't look up at what's going on around you, and definitely don't demand to be paid in a hard currency because we don't have any way to pay that. Love your content. If I want to learn more about that's okay. Yeah. Anyway, G. Edward Griffin, Creature from Jekyll, and that's a great start. As soon as you start down that road, just word of warning. As soon as you start down that road, forever will it embed into your destiny. And trust me, there's no coming back. You can't unsee it. It's the very first warning I gave everybody. If you go back to find my primer video, like way back, like 3 years ago on the other channel on YT, if you go there and you find it, you will find me giving this word of warning, this dire warning to people. Like once you start to understand it, you can't unsee it, and you will see it everywhere, and it will dominate your thought process, and it will make you a pariah to a lot of people. For real, you will become kind of a pariah because you know stuff that other people don't know, and especially the more you know, as many more years you spend understanding this, it becomes very difficult to just sort of relax and enjoy the game kind of thing at that point. So I hope that, just again, it's a word of warning, and I would tell anybody this. The third protege I ever had. I've only had 3 proteges, and the third protege I ever had, she had asked the same question, and I sent her down this road. And then after many years, she was protege of mine for 6 years. And after that, I remember this conversation where she was just like disheartened all the time. And I said, yep, you've graduated. Welcome. Welcome to the real world. And she was really and I said, now you get the opportunity now that you know all this stuff. Now you get to understand, you get to try and find a sense of humor about it. And that's going to be tricky, but it's not impossible. Are you expecting visitors with that thing in your hand? Oh, no. I don't have any fidget spinners or anything like that. I don't do anything. Like I said, I was just sitting here and it was just sitting there. So anyway, let's see here. Keep going, almost there. Let's see here. Our currency system is a tremendous value in the world. Yeah. So the valuations between one currency and the other is the reason why Americans are so loved in other countries. Now, as soon as that goes away, I will assure you, they will ask you to leave. And I'm guessing that my little light here died. Because I become accountable. Yeah, exactly. Atari, yeah, I know. Let's see here. Can you explain what's going to happen? By the way, no, that actually was not a shell. By the way, just so you know, that's actually it's a matchstick holder. Just so you know, it's actually not even real. That was actually a matchstick holder. So in case anybody was wondering, that was a. Anyway, whatever. It's for little waterproof matches, and it just looks like it's so. What's going to happen to mortgage-backed securities? Nothing. Like I said a long time ago, this is going to go on as long as people are willing to keep accepting it. That's it. There is no, like, I mean, like, I get that. This number 3 question I get is, Axel, how much longer is this going to go on? Forever is my answer, as long as people are willing to keep accepting dollars. Every time you're willing to, for example, you're willing to sell your farmland off for dollars to some investment firm, you make it worse. Boomers in World War II, Jen, frankly, and they're the most guilty of this. This is not a bash boomer thing. I do have my fun bashing boomers periodically, but that's not what this is about. It was boomers in the World War II gen people who did all this. They are largely responsible for selling off a lot of the country's assets, the real assets, the farmland, things like that. Oil production, things like that. Like they've sold all that stuff off. The ports, what is it? Like 80% of our ports aren't even owned by by Americans anymore. So, everybody who was all upset about the port strikes, like, dude, why do you care about those other countries? What you cared about, unfortunately, just getting cheap crap from China, and all the accounts that were out there. I'll just say it, but a lot of the right wing accounts out there, you guys are no different than those media talking points. We see those videos where the media, it's like they all say the same exact talking points. We've all seen those memes, right? They're everywhere, and like right wing Twitter, or the other. I don't know. Anyway, a lot of these other content creators, right, that fit into this category. These guys, unfortunately, they fit into the same thing happens because they get paid for that kind of stuff, right? It's how it works. Even though you don't know how you're getting paid, which is once again why I don't consider social media a business model and never will. Unless they actually make it to where, hey, if you get, here's what we're never going to censor you. We're never going to censor anything you do. You can put literally anything you want on the screen, with the exception of like maybe 2 or 3 things, and we know what they are. There's like 2 or 3 things that you should not put on, ever on a screen. And you should never, in my opinion, be involved in any of that personally. But as long as you're not doing anything like that, you can say whatever you want. And if you get this amount of views or this amount of clicks or whatever it is, or likes and stuff, we're going to give you this amount of money. Until they do something like that, I don't consider social media a business model. And no one will ever do that. They will always have this sort of moving goalpost of like payouts. You never really know how you get paid and how much, revenue and if you were 80s and rich, you had a dryer in Hawaii. Dryer in Hawaii? I don't. I knew kids who went to Hawaii on vacations when I was a kid and stuff. And again, that was like nuts for me growing up. Like, we went to like Lake Chelan, I lived and went into a tent, and that was the last time that actually happened. So, in fact, I think that's my last vacation. It was 1987. Was the last time I actually went on an actual, according to Hoyle, vacation. So I have to go back into the 80s, that far back. Swamp Cooler, yep. This is the best channel. Well, thank you very much. How much can you smuggle to? You mean like of gold? Well, as much as you can fit in your prison pocket, I suppose, which isn't very much. However, in orange internet money, a lot. Billions and billions. Actually, I just criticized somebody for this earlier. So billions and billions of dollars. You got to say it like Carl Sagan. If you say billions and billions, you have to say it like Carl Sagan. You can't just say billions and billions. That's boring. You say billions and billions. Let's see here. Live in neo-feudalism. Yeah. It's we're rapidly approaching that. I'm not quite that cynical. I haven't got quite that cynical. I know that you see my other stuff and you're like, man, you're like this horrible super duper cynic. Like, yes and no. I'm slightly cynical, but at the same time, for me, this is kind of fun to watch because more and more people are starting to get this little by little. They're starting to understand. The more people who start to see it as a scam for the scam that it is, the easier it is to try and explain why they're seeing a scam, right? It's sort of like, think of it like this. I use the example of the Mechanical Turk. Look it up. You guys can look up the Mechanical Turk. The Mechanical Turk was a legitimate scam. It was a so-called chess playing computer back in the whatever it was. I'm going to get myself in all kinds of trouble. What is with this puzzle piece thing? Okay, so anyway, where you have to, you were going to play chess against this so-called mechanical device that would play chess, right? And what it was, of course, is it was a guy inside the box, and he was moving the little robotic arm. It was a scam. It was con. It was fake. That's just how it is. U.S. economy's largest Ponzi scheme. Yeah, it is. It's. I don't want to say the U.S. economy, because when we say economy means people. That's all economy means. An economy is just people, you and me engaging in commerce, okay? The US dollar, on the other hand, is in fact, and I'm sure that's what you meant, that is in fact probably the single largest Ponzi scheme that has ever been perpetrated on all of humanity. Even the Romans couldn't make their currency as worthless as the US dollar. And the light that we're going by the way, for those of you wondering, it's actually a fire that I have going, and that's where all the light is, the sort of the ambient light is coming from. And it's not a real fire, it's actually a fake fire. It's my giant TV that has the fake fire going inside. Because I felt cold in here, because, it's like 1,000,000 degrees outside today. It's like 90 outside, right? Even right now, it's probably like 84 degrees outside if I go outside. And I've been working on it all day. But then I come into the house, and in the house it's like 66 degrees in here. So anyway, legislation when mails are shipped. Yeah, there's that. So no perspective of what freedom was supposed. Well, okay, so that is a complaint that I have too. It creates, once again, I mean, since we're talking about the fiat currency aspect idea, that it creates the illusion of wealth. It creates the illusion that you can sell something off and then say, okay, well, but if you don't have any money coming in, right, eventually you will run out of money. But if you're constantly keeping the Ponzi scheme going, this is your so-called stock market investing and so forth, and cash flow and all that kind of stuff. The problem is that, and it does work, but eventually you'll run out of everybody else's money, especially if you're using OPM the entire time. That's a whole different conversation. That's a much bigger conversation that I think that I have the patience to go into tonight anyway. I don't think going for, no, I mean, it won't go on forever. And I use that term again. I use the term forever loosely. It won't. I mean, especially if they're going to continue to, and this is the truth, if you're going to continue to import progressively cheap labor, which is precisely what's happened. I'm in South Texas. A lot of the laborers in this area are very upset about the constant bringing in cheaper labor, because these guys can't make any money now. And so you have people that are they're working more and more and more hours, and they're going home with less and less money every single month. And that's not exclusive to the day laborers. That's everybody right now. That's the part where I would go so far as to say, you're probably right. No, it can't go on forever, but it can go on for a lot longer if they keep bringing in cheaper labor that prop up all these companies. I'm critical of the left, of a lot of people that are on the left that say, well, we need to have, we need to let all the people come to this country, stop, having borders and so on. This is the loser-tardians. I get concerned about the libertarians, the large L libertarians, when they say things like this, because it's like, well, all you're doing is propping this up as opposed to letting it collapse, which is what you should be allowing it to do. You're propping up a failed system by just bringing in cheaper and cheaper labor. And you're not doing anybody any favors by doing this. You're certainly not doing your own countrymen favor, but you're certainly not doing the people that you're bringing here any favors either, because you're throwing them out of into the wilderness. So, tears are relocated to a free market society. It feels like a monopoly in every aspect. Yeah, I mean, I guess it can. I'm not sure what you mean. I'm sorry, I don't think I understood. I may have misunderstood that. Everything is virtually a scam. Yeah, I mean, it's because everything is made so